What is going on, guys? Zev here, and today we will be taking a look at Alastor, the radio demon himself. Now, funny enough, I actually wasn't all that big of a fan of Alastor when Has-Been first came out, but since then my opinions have wildly changed, and he's now one of my favorite characters. But today we're going to be specifically focusing on how powerful this guy is, and how he can handle himself against other characters from the action universe, and maybe even mix in a few others.
Alastor, pleasure to be meeting you, sweetheart. Quite a pleasure.
Alastor was a radio host and serial killer in the 1920s and 30s, who had a tragic yet possibly hilarious death relating to canines. Once his soul found its way into hell, he took over and conquered some of hell's most powerful beings seemingly overnight. As Vaggie described in her monologue, he began to topple overlords who have been dominant for centuries. That kind of power had never been harnessed by a mortal soul before. During all of this, he would broadcast his actions all across hell, and now he just wants to watch a bunch of porn-addicted junkies fail for eternity because it makes him happy. Let's just go ahead and dive directly into what this guy can do.
If I wanted to hurt anyone here, I would have done so already.
Just his mere presence carries evil energy that can be physically felt. His evil intent on its own can visibly alter reality that has effect on others and their surroundings. He can move swiftly as if he's a shadow, fast enough that Charlie and Vaggie turned away for a second and he was right behind them. Just the mere approach of signing a deal with him can create unnatural light and powerful winds. With the flick of his finger, he can summon other beings in seconds. He can actually manipulate solid matter and even elements like fire, again, with just a motion of his finger. His most blatant use of power is seen where he opens up portals to summon other demonic beings to completely subdue a blimp with great technological destructive abilities, again, with the wave of his fingers. And he did all of this without breaking a sweat and keeping a smile the entire time. Now, before we progress further, let's discuss what we know about this universe's version of Hell to put an accurate scale of power. Hell is full of countless beings who were once mortal but have since sinned and wound up here. However, there are also some Hellborn inhabitants. Taking in those who work at IMP, they've shown physical and even cognitive capabilities beyond an average human. Then there's Cherry Bomb and Sir Pentious. Cherry Bomb has an unlimited amount of explosions at her disposal, and her agility is nothing to take lightly. Pentious has very great physical strength and technologically destructive capabilities, possibly making both of them, or at least Pentious, a city-level threat. And during the 666 newscast, it was stated that turf wars like this were common at this specific time, so the possibility of Hell being infested with hundreds of thousands of powerful souls is definitely high. Not to mention, as stated by Vivienne herself, everything in Hell is dangerous, inhospitable, and terrifying, so it's very safe to say that Hell is levels beyond what the human world is capable of. Not to mention, these are just average beings of Hell. Who knows how powerful their overlords are? And these beings had control over Hell for centuries before Alastor manifested, and he, once a mortal soul, overpowered them overnight. Alastor is no joke, like for real, this dude is incredibly powerful. I would also like to bring this up real quick. How big is Hell exactly? I've had people say it's as large as a continent or as large as the living world. At first, I thought it could be scaled similar to a country. According to Vivienne, Hell has its own geography, its own climate, and its own species of creatures. There's a bunch of other cities in Hell, there's a bunch of other terrain like deserts and jungles. But this still leaves us with a pretty tricky measurement. So for now, I don't think a lot of people are going to argue about Hell possibly being continental. And if we truly want to go off that, that makes Alastor a low continent buster in terms of sheer power alone. And even if we wanted to lowball this, I don't think any of us would be uncomfortable saying Hell is at very least country level. Next up, just for fun, we're going to pin Alastor up against other characters of fiction just to get a more in-depth level of his potential powers and abilities. This will all be judged by what I personally know about the certain character and what I personally think Al is capable of, also basing it off of what we've been shown. But before we get into that, let me explain myself. Here's what I personally believe. As it currently stands, I think Alastor can do anything, and by that I don't mean he's omnipotent, or even nigh omnipotent for that matter. However, I have great reason to believe that the true extent of his powers are far beyond what we've been shown. He could probably raise a mountain from below the ground, or destroy one with the motion of his fists. He could probably manipulate lava to an ungodly amount, and who knows how far his firebending goes. So basically, if Avatar had hellbending, Alastor would be the Ozai of that tribe. But another big factor we need to take into account is, well, the lack of factors. We haven't been given a lot of detail or showings for how he lies in terms of combat intelligence or durability. Just by guessing, I can assume that he's way above average intelligence. However, he also comes off as a guy who wouldn't indulge himself into all-out combat. However, that doesn't mean he can't put up a fight when he needs to or wants to. In terms of durability, he seems like the kind of guy who would get off on the pain he receives while at the same time deriving anger from it, violently increasing his power. Also, he got a blade shoved in his face and barely batted an eye. So with that confidence, I would say that even the above average damage input for him wouldn't be a huge issue. But of course, we also have to remember that all the demons that reside in this hell cannot kill each other. They can only die by means of equipment used by the exterminators. So we can look at this from two ways. Either Al can be killed by whatever opponent we pin him against, or he can't die and it all comes down to how his opponents could overpower him or how he just can't do anything about it. But for this, we'll take in both sides.
So it's a deal then?
So to start things off here, I think it's safe to say that no average or even above average human can begin to handle what Al is capable of. Diving into the world of fiction, we have a similar character in Discord, and while his powers are beyond imagination, he can't really do much besides cause a little bit of chaos, and he has been defeated multiple times throughout the series. So while him and Al might have some fun getting on each other's nerves, I'm fairly certain Al can rip this guy to shreds if he wanted to. Taking a look into the Friendship is Magic universe, I won't delve too much into it as I like to save that for a future video. However, I will say this. Nightmare Moon is more powerful than Celestia, and she exhibits great power over environmental manipulation, very similar to Alastor as a matter of fact, but nothing Al hasn't already done more of, and done more of to a violent extent. Sombra has mind control and can even dematerialize himself in the form of dark magic, making him nearly invulnerable. I think Alastor has enough mental fortitude to fight off Sombra's powers, and there isn't much else Sombra can do to hurt him, so even if Al couldn't land a hit on Sombra, the fight wouldn't really go anywhere, and they'd likely just give up. Next, there's Tyrek, who is powerful enough to go toe-to-toe with magic as powerful as all the equestrian princesses combined, and even physically strong enough to affect the environment and breeze through a mountain. It's tough to imagine what Al would specifically have up his sleeve against this kind of power. If we want to theorize that Equestria and Hell are the same size and landscape, these two would have an incredible battle. Even on a continental scale, Tyrek is no joke at all, and maybe one of the few I think that has the remote possibility of taking out Alastor, just with his raw power alone. However, Tyrek, Chrysalis, and Cozy Glow were so powerful together that it took all of Equestria to take them down. Assuming Tyrek is just as powerful as he was before, this could be a really tricky battle for Al. Even with presumably unlimited demonic power, the three of them conspiring against him could prove pretty tough. But for now, I'll leave it at 50-50. So we're not going to dive too deep into these next couple categories. Things get trickier in the DC universe. Wonder Woman can pull a third of the Earth's weight. While Alastor has amazing abilities and manipulation, it's hard to imagine what he'd do against that kind of raw strength. Hal Jordan does have the potential to take him down if his will were strong enough to do so.
You won't do that again. Unless I want to.
Batman, Robin, Barbara, Joker, and any other related characters are just too human to face against him. Superman needs no explanation. It's an easy seal. Then we have Barry, who I believe 100% can defeat Alastor. While Al is stealthful and quick, I doubt he's light speed. Moving on to Marvel, it's very debatable whether Al can solo the Avengers roster. I don't believe he can. Thor has lifted the Midgard Serpent, who is large enough to encircle the Earth, and with Mjolnir, he's a very deadly force to be reckoned with. Hulk's limitless strength is beyond what even Tyrek can handle, so again, brute strength alone wins. If Peter, Gwen, and Miles were to team up against him, I can't see them having much progress, so they entangle him in some webs and he could probably just poof out of there. Even if they manage to get a hit on him, we'd have to consider the scenario of Al not being able to die. In that case, the Spider Sense could give them the capabilities of survival, but not victory. Even with him being unkillable in his universe, the Beyonder, Living Tribunal, and One Above All can still erase him with a thought. When it comes to the Dragon Ball universe, there's nothing to discuss. At the beginning of Z, Piccolo and Goku were already at moon level. So yeah, enough said. And Ben 10 can easily beat him because, you know. So guys, I'm just gonna leave it at that. I was considering the Naruto and One Punch Man universes, but that shit just goes for miles, and we'd be leaning way too much into the presumptuous territory than we already need to. So for now, I'll leave it at this. How powerful is this guy? If we want to be as accurate as we can while not digging too much into theory, he is at the very least country to continent level. I think the land of Equestria would be a good scale to compare Has-Been's Hell. So Alastor is a demonic being with the abilities of matter manipulation, interdimensional access, enough demonic energy to manipulate manipulate reality, and potential fire manipulation. All of this while conquering beings who are dominant on a possibly continental level. Now, this is where things are tricky. While Alastor has the ability to rule over a continent, that doesn't make him a continent buster. More or less continental surface level, or just low continent level. It's hard to say if characters who are not exactly able to take over a continent are able to beat him. For example, if Doomguy had the Unmaker, a weapon that feeds off of demonic energy, he would presumably be able to kill him. However, that doesn't exactly make the Slayer a continental threat, but that's for another day. This is an incredibly picky skill to handle, and it leads to a lot of presumptions that can lead to a lot of inaccuracies, as we haven't seen what Al is fully capable of. This is all just how I personally see it, so feel free to disagree. So, hope you guys enjoyed this fun little video. Try not to take it too seriously. It's all theory and up in the air at this point. If we get further info as the series goes on, which we likely will, then I will make a redo. Hope you guys enjoyed. Have a good day. Peace.